What is going on in the industry right now? Listen, if you would have told me 2 years ago that Drake, yes, Drizzy Drake, the sixth god himself, would be publicly fumbled by the industry and slowly exiled from the throne he once ruled, I would have laughed in your face. Now, the whispers are getting louder, the vibes are changing. And one name keeps rising up in the silence. Kendrick Lamar. It's no longer just about rap beefs or bar for bar. Nah, this is bigger. We talk in betrayals, closed-door meetings, shady industry shifts, and even some of Drake's own people allegedly switching sides. There's rumors of secret audio leaked convos and DMs getting scrubbed by OVO insiders. Like, what is really going on behind the scenes? Fans are shocked. The game is shook. And meanwhile, Kendrick. Bro, he's been eerily calm, almost like he knew this collapse was coming all along. So buckle up. 'Cause in this video, we break down the moment Drake's empire started crumbling, and how the industry's been silently pivoting toward Kendrick. Get ready for drama, betrayal, fake smiles, and real tension. You are not going to believe how deep this goes. Let's get into it. It all started quiet. Too quiet. Like the calm before a storm nobody saw coming. Summer 2024, Drake was fresh off the release of a surprise EP. It's the kind of vibe-heavy, smooth-talking late-night music that usually got his fans in a chokehold. But this time, something felt off. The numbers weren't matching the hype. Yeah, it debuted high. It's Drake. Of course it did, but the conversation around it disappeared within days. No Twitter trends. No viral moments. No debates, just ... silence. Meanwhile, Kendrick Lamar, who had been laying low since his explosive guest verse on that one Metro Boomin track, suddenly reappeared in the most calculated way possible. No announcement. No warning. Just a mysterious visual snippet that fans decoded instantly. It was poetry. It was pain. It was precision. And it wasn't just art, it was a warning shot. What came next sent shockwaves through the rap world. Kendrick dropped a 6-minute track titled God's Reply. And while he never mentioned names, the subs were loud enough to echo through Toronto. Fans were quick to point out the veiled shots lines about being an industry puppet, about fake friendships, and about chart success not meaning real respect. The internet lit up. Some called it the end of Drake's run. Others said he'd bounce back like always. But the thing is, Drake didn't respond, not with music, not with tweets, not even with passive-aggressive lyrics on Instagram stories. And that's when the real questions started. Inside the OVO camp, insiders say things were tense. One close source who asked to stay anonymous claimed Drake was furious. Not about the diss, but about who was helping spread it. Allegedly, someone from his inner circle had leaked private convos. Someone he trusted. Someone who had been around for years. And that betrayal. It hit harder than any lyric. The name floating around was Bizarre, a longtime OVO producer. Known in the credits but rarely in the spotlight. Allegedly, he had been meeting with members of T.A. Kendrick's old label on the low. What was discussed? No one knows for sure. But the rumors were enough to cause major tension. People were kicked out of studio sessions. Phones were being checked. Loyalty was being tested. Around this time, fans started noticing a shift in how industry people were talking. No more blind praise for Drake. No more guaranteed features. Producers who used to chase Drake placements were now talking about craft over clout. It was subtle, but real. Suddenly, Kendrick's name was being brought up in rooms where only Drake used to exist. And for the first time in over a decade, it felt like the crown was up for grabs. In LA, one viral moment added fuel to the fire. A well-known A&R went on a podcast and casually said, if Kendrick wanted to, he could end careers tomorrow. He just chooses peace. The clip blew up. Fans interpreted it as a direct warning to Drake. Even though no names were mentioned, everyone knew what time it was. Drake, who had always controlled the narrative, was now on the back foot. And worse, even some of his longtime fans were starting to switch sides. One viral TikTok featured a fan crying while deleting all his Drake playlists. "I still love him, but I can't pretend the music hits the same." The caption read, comments were flooded with people agreeing. Some blamed age, others blamed repetition. But deep down, many felt like Drake had become ... predictable. In the middle of all this, another bomb dropped. Champagne Papi himself was spotted in a heated argument outside a club in Miami. Shaky fan footage showed Drake yelling at someone off camera. The audio was low, but one line could be heard clearly. "You really think you can flip on me like that and eat?" Speculation ran wild. Who was he talking to? Was it a friend? An artist? Some believed it was a young OVO signee who had just signed a publishing deal with a different label behind Drake's back. Others said it was a former manager. Whatever the case, emotions were clearly running high. And it wasn't a good look. Kendrick, on the other hand, remained silent. No interviews. Just a single photo of him sitting in a dimly lit room, writing. Fans called it a chess move. It looked like while Drake was spiraling, Kendrick was focused. And that's when the real twist came. A major streaming executive, someone close to both camps, accidentally let something slip during a tech panel. When asked about the future of hip-hop, they said, "We're investing in timeless voices. Artists with stories to tell. No gimmicks." Then they paused, smiled, and said, "Kendrick is that guy." Again, no name drop. But the internet connected the dots. If Kendrick was now being positioned as the industry's golden child, what did that mean for Drake? Was he being phased out? Was the industry finally tired of the Drake formula? Behind closed doors, OVO was in panic mode. According to one insider, meetings were being held daily. Publicists were scrambling to schedule interviews. Drake was allegedly planning a surprise album to reclaim the throne. But the vibe was off. People close to him said he was stressed, paranoid, even distant from his closest friends. And then came the final blow, at least for part one of this saga. Drake received a mysterious package at his home. No return address. No signature. Just a USB drive and a note that read, "You know what you did," on the drive. Allegedly, a never-before-heard track. A Kendrick demo. Raw, unfinished, but filled with venom. Bars that weren't just aimed at Drake's career, but at his character, his secrets, his past. The kind of things only someone close would know. Drake's team immediately went into lockdown. Lawyers were called. Security was tightened. And Drake, he vanished from the public eye completely. But what no one knew at the time was that Kendrick had one more move up his sleeve. And that's exactly where we pick up in part two of this wild, unfolding story. The next 48 hours after that package landed were filled with nothing but confusion, fear, and suspicion. Drake, who once moved like a calculated boss, started making erratic decisions. One moment he was shutting down all press requests. The next, he was calling up journalists himself, trying to get ahead of a story that hadn't even been made public yet. His inner circle described it like watching a king protect a crumbling castle, walls falling down around him, and nobody left he could really trust. Words started to spread inside certain music circles about the USB. Apparently, Kendrick's demo track wasn't just lyrical. It was personal. He rapped about conversations that had never been made public, about deals behind deals, about ghost-written verses that allegedly were never supposed to see daylight. There were even lines that touched on things way beyond music, family issues, legal battles, and hints at some romantic betrayals involving names people definitely recognized. One line had industry execs whispering, "You built your house with mirrors. I just broke the glass, the song never leaked." But the fear it created, that was real. OVO was spinning. The usual confidence, the usual swag, gone. And fans noticed. Interviews that were previously locked in got quietly canceled. Rumored collabs with top-tier producers went radio silent. One OVO insider even claimed Drake had stopped going into the studio altogether. He was just ... sitting, listening, rereading texts. replaying old convos, trying to figure out who betrayed him. Meanwhile, Kendrick remained ghost. No tweets, no confirmation. No denial, just silence. But silence from Kendrick. That's when it's most dangerous. He was moving like a villain in a marvelmovie.com, unbothered. Always 3 steps ahead. Then came the billboard incident, across downtown Toronto. A massive black billboard appeared overnight. No logo, no artist name. Just one phrase in white. Legacy can't be streamed, fans lost their minds. Speculation exploded. Was it Kendrick? Was it a marketing campaign? Was Drake trolling himself? Within hours, it became a trending topic worldwide. OVO affiliates claimed it had nothing to do with them. But deep insiders whispered otherwise. They said Kendrick's team had bought up digital billboard space in 4 cities: Toronto, New York, London, and Law, each with a different phrase, all with the same energy. Shots fired, Drake's fans were outraged. But others, they started to shift. Suddenly, people who used to worship every Drake drop were calling him out for being too calculated, too commercial, too disconnected. The tide was turning, and Drake could feel it. One night, around 2:30 a.m., he went live on Instagram. It only lasted 2 minutes. He didn't say much, just looked into the camera, eyes low, voice heavy, and said, "Funny how they love you when you disappear. I built this, but I guess foundations crack." Then he ended the live. Millions watched it. Millions more reposted. Fans started to panic. People said he looked broken, tired, like he had finally accepted something none of them wanted to say out loud, that maybe, just maybe, the Drake era was really ending. What happened next wasn't a track, wasn't a video, wasn't even music. It was a betrayal. A former OVO staff member, someone who had been with Drake since the Take Care days, went on a popular podcast and let it all spill. He didn't say everything, but he said enough. He talked about the paranoia in Drake's camp, how they had been monitoring everyone's phone calls looking for leaks, how there were fights over money, over loyalty, over fear. But then he said something that really shook people. The reason he didn't respond to Kendrick ... is because he knew he couldn't win this time. Not with bars, not with truth, not with clout. Kendrick came with something bigger. The internet exploded. Memes flew. Think pieces dropped. Analysts started comparing their catalogs. And then, in one of the wildest moments yet, Kendrick's old label mate, Absol, tweeted a single emoji. The meaning, clear to those who knew. It was only a matter of time. And just like that, Kendrick reemerged. Not with a diss, not with a freestyle, but with something far more powerful. A short film titled The Quiet King. The 16-minute short dropped without warning on YouTube. No promo, no rollout. And yet, it hit over 20 million views in the first day. The film was abstract, poetic, full of symbolism. But fans quickly pieced it together. It was about an empire built on illusion. A kingdom built by a man who danced with mirrors until he couldn't see himself anymore. A prince rises. Then a shadow appears. And by the end, the throne is empty. Drake didn't respond. The film hit too hard. And too close. At this point, other artists began to speak out. Not in Drake's defense, but in Kendrick's favor. J. Cole posted a cryptic message on his story. Truth ages well. Shaw liked a tweet calling Kendrick the soul of the industry. Even producers like Hit Boy and Alchemist started reposting scenes from the short film. Behind the scenes, the industry was already moving. Execs were prioritizing Kendrick's next album rollout. Award shows were making space. Major playlists that had been Drake-dominated for over a decade started pushing different voices. It was like a quiet coup, and the king didn't even fight back. Then came the final nail of part 2, a leak. Not a song. Not a tweet. A legal document. It hit the forums first. Then Reddit. Then hip-hop blogs. A leaked NDA from someone deep inside OVO's business circle. The NDA had one major clause. It forbids certain staff from discussing or referencing personal knowledge of specific past events, recordings and legal disputes dating back to 2015 involving artist K.L. Fans connected the dots. This wasn't just beef. This was cover-up. And if that's true, then what else is being hidden? The narrative had flipped. Drake wasn't the invincible chart topper anymore. He was now the question mark, the mystery, the man who had everything and was now at risk of losing more than just respect. He was losing the culture, and as part 2 closes, all eyes turn to one thing: the unreleased Kendrick track that allegedly still sits inside that mysterious USB. Will it leak? Will Drake retaliate? Or is it already too late? The silence from Drake after the NDA leak was deafening. Normally, any threat to his name would trigger a swift and calculated clapback, a freestyle, a bar, a cryptic caption. But this time, nothing. Not even a whisper. No tweet, no story, no feature. Just void. For someone who once prided himself on controlling narratives, Drake had suddenly lost the one thing he always had: the mic. Behind the scenes, OVO was scrambling. People close to the team said meetings were tense. One source claimed Drake had flown out to the islands for privacy and clarity. But even that wasn't enough to stop the bleeding. The industry had started to shift. Quietly, but sharply. Blogs, radio stations, playlists, curators, all the power players were moving their energy toward Kendrick. It wasn't about popularity anymore. It was about legacy. And Kendrick. He still hadn't said a word, but someone else did. A few days after the NDA surfaced, a voice memo leaked online. It was grainy, low quality, clearly recorded without consent. But the voices were unmistakable. One of them belonged to Kendrick, and the other, a former OVO insider. In the clip, the two are allegedly discussing something called the Safe Keep folder. Fans immediately went into detective mode. Reddit threads popped up. TikTok analysts broke it down frame by frame. What was in the folder? Why did Kendrick have access to it? And why did the insiders sound so nervous? Some believed the folder contained unreleased tracks. Others believed it was filled with footage. One wild theory suggested it had contracts that would expose just how deep the industry politics went. Whatever it was, one thing became clear. Kendrick had leverage. Real, dangerous leverage. And he was using it with surgical precision. Back in Toronto, the tension wasn't just industry-wide, it was personal. Friends who had grown up with Drake were reportedly being cut off. Phones stopped ringing. Longtime business partners started moving differently. Even some of Drake's family, who had always been quiet and supportive, were now being dragged into the mess. One of Drake's cousins, who had once worked closely with the OVO team, posted a tweet that raised eyebrows everywhere. Funny how truth makes even family uncomfortable. It got deleted within minutes, but the screenshot was already viral. Meanwhile, Kendrick resurfaced, not through music, but through movement. He was spotted at a school in Compton, hosting a poetry workshop for teenagers. No cameras, no press. Just a phone clip from a student who caught the moment he said, "Art outlives hype." It always has. Fans took it as another quiet jab. But this one stung differently because it spoke to a bigger truth. Drake's dominance had always lived in the moment. The club, the charts, the trends. But Kendrick was playing for forever. And for the first time, it looked like people were starting to care more about depth than drip. And then, as if scripted, the unthinkable happened. The Kendrick track leaked, but not how people expected. Not on SoundCloud, not through a hacker. A popular hip-hop blogger tweeted, "This not beef. This spiritual war. And Kendrick's winning." Within 12 hours, the song had been uploaded, taken down, re-uploaded, and finally archived across Reddit and megafolders. But the damage was done. Kendrick didn't even post it. It just existed and still took over the conversation. Drake's response? Once again, nothing. Instead, someone else spoke up. Noah 40SHEBIB in a rare Instagram comment under a fan page debating the track. 40 simply wrote, "Not everything needs a reply. Some things need healing." Fans were stunned. Was this him admitting defeat? Or was it deeper, a sign that even the closest members of Drake's camp were starting to rethink their loyalty? And then came the next twist, maybe the biggest one yet. A former OVO artist who had been quiet for years broke their silence. In a live interview on a small underground channel, the artist claimed there was an agreement between Kendrick and Drake years ago, a non-aggression pact, allegedly made during the peak of their friendly competition. According to the artist, Kendrick only broke the pact after a specific event, a phone call that Drake allegedly recorded and used. It's Kendrick/leverage in a business deal. The details were fuzzy, but the energy was clear. The trust had been broken long ago, and now it was all catching up. The final moment of part 3 came not from Kendrick, not from Drake, but from a fan. A young artist from Chicago posted a song titled "Crownless," inspired by the drama. In it, he rapped, "We watched the empire burn and didn't blink. Maybe we needed kings to fall so we could think the song went viral." Not because it was polished, but because it captured the mood of a generation. Fans weren't just picking sides anymore, they were rethinking what they valued in artists: truth, vulnerability, authenticity. All the things Kendrick had been preaching since day one. Now, it felt like his moment had finally come full circle. As the rap world held its breath, waiting to see what Drake would do, one question hung in the air like smoke. What happens when the most powerful man in music runs out of power? And that's exactly where we pick up in part 4 of this unfolding storm. After weeks of silence, speculation, and slow collapse, Drake finally reappeared. But it wasn't on a track. It wasn't in an interview. It wasn't even in Toronto. He showed up at a private charity event in London, unannounced, suited up, smiling for the cameras, acting like nothing had happened. But behind the smiles, those close to him say he was different, quieter, disconnected. The same man who used to command the room now looked like someone just trying to stay in it. One reporter tried to ask him about Kendrick. The tension in the room shifted instantly. Drake smiled, nodded, and said, "Sometimes silence is louder than noise." And just like that, he walked away. But the silence was getting hard to maintain. The leaked Kendrick track had become more than just music. It was now being studied in universities, broken down on news networks, and even quoted by other artists during award speeches. One host at a major ceremony ended their monologue with, "Shout out to the quiet kings, the ones who don't need 10 albums to prove one point." The crowd erupted. Cameras cut to artists nodding. It was clear who that shot was aimed at. Behind closed doors, Drake was reportedly furious. Not at Kendrick, but at how easily the industry had turned. Insiders claimed he felt abandoned, used, like everyone who once stood beside him was now feeding off his downfall for clout. He started making calls, reaching out to artists, producers, influencers, trying to line up a project that would remind the world who he was. He wasn't trying to diss Kendrick anymore. He was trying to reclaim himself. But every studio session hit a wall. Some producers didn't show up. Some canceled last minute. One even texted back, "This ain't the energy I want to attach myself to right now." Drake was shocked. These were people who once begged for placements. Now they were dodging his number. The final blow came from someone no one expected, Lil Wayne. Wayne, who had discovered and mentored Drake, appeared on a podcast to promote a new album. When asked about the current state of hip-hop, he said, "Real always wins. You can fake a lot, but not that." He didn't say Drake's name, but everyone knew. Fans were divided. Some clung to Drake's legacy. Others said it was time for new kings. And many admitted something they hadn't wanted to say for years. Maybe Drake had already peaked. And maybe that peak was years ago as pressure mounted. Drake finally did what fans had been begging for. He announced a new track, no album. Just a single dot, no promo. No snippet, just a date and the title, Exit Wounds. When the night came, fans stayed up. Timelines flooded. YouTube was ready. But what they heard, no one expected. Exit Wounds wasn't a diss. It wasn't a comeback. It wasn't even rap. It was a moody, stripped-down melodic monologue. Half spoken, half sung. No hook, no beat drops. Just Drake, a piano. And the sound of someone who had finally stopped pretending to be unbothered. He talked about losing friends, losing control, losing himself. One line stood out. When you spend a decade being perfect, people wait decades for you to bleed. Another moment felt like a direct response to Kendrick. You taught me silence could scream louder than a verse. I taught you what it looked like to be loved first. Fans were speechless. Some praised the vulnerability. Some called it too little, too late. Others said it was the first real thing Drake had dropped in. Years. But the most powerful response didn't come from fans. It came from Kendrick, in the most Kendrick way possible. He posted a photo, just a tree. No caption, but in the comments, someone asked, "Is the storm over?" Kendrick replied, "It was never about the storm. It was about Kendrick. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the one who played the long game and won it in silence." So, the question is yours. Is this the end of Drake's reign, or just the beginning of a rebirth? Was Kendrick's silent campaign a masterclass in restraint? Or a quiet declaration of war that left the biggest name in hip-hop shook? Did the industry really flip sides? Or was it just waiting for a reason? Because at the end of the day, what we witnessed wasn't just a beef. It wasn't just bars. It was a shift. A shift in culture and values in the very fabric of how we define greatness. Drake gave us an era. Kendrick, maybe he's giving us something deeper. And in a world full of algorithms, streams, and fake love, maybe the real ones are finally getting the spotlight they deserve. But we want to hear from you. Is Drake still the GOAT? Or has Kendrick officially claimed the throne? Was the industry betrayal real? Or just internet conspiracy? And most importantly, do you think Drake has one final move left? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. No filter. We read every single one. If you rocked with this breakdown, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And turn those post notifications all the way on, because the next twist, it could drop any day now. This is hip-hop history happening in real time, and we're just getting started. Stay locked in.